Every one of us is the hero of our own story, but we're also the villain in someone else's.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Susie Fevens.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Wellness Simplified podcast. This week we're talking about perception and how, while we are the hero of our own story, it is inevitable that we are also going to be the villain in somebody else's story, and there is nothing that we can do about it. We've all heard the sayings that what other people say about me is none of my business, or what Susie says about Sally says more about Susie than it does about Sally. Of course, I take a little bit of offense to that because why are you going to bring me into this? But it's hard to really understand or believe that when people say negative things about you or about your business or about your family or about whatever, that it doesn't really have anything to do with you. And I do have, what I think is a pretty good story that demonstrates this. This past Monday was a cleanup day in my area, which, if in case you don't have this where you are, in the spring and in the fall, we have fall cleanup and spring cleanup where you can throw out extra things and the garbage men will come and they will take it away. So if you have like an old mattress or an old appliance that is no longer usable, things like that, you can put it out by the road and it's above your regular allotment. Like we can only put out so many bags of recycling, so many bags of garbage, etc. So this past Monday was our cleanup week. And somebody always brings this up and I always think about it. And this year it was my husband who made the comment. There was a situation a few years ago, and some of you listening may have been around when this happened because I did make an Instagram post about it. But I'm going to assume that most people listening have not heard this story. I don't recall if it was in the spring or in the fall. It doesn't really matter. But one day, a day or so after our spring or fall cleanup, there was a knock at my door just in the middle of the afternoon. And I went to the door and there was a woman standing there. And she said, "Are you Susie Fevens?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she had just the most negative look on her face. And she goes, "When was the last time you were at blank road?" And I said, I'm not sure where that even is, so I don't know when I would have been there. And I said, "Why are you asking?" And she's like, "Because you've been to my house and you dumped a whole bunch of garbage on my property." And I was like, "Excuse me, what?" Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, "We have a property that's down the road from our house, and we went there last night, and somebody had dumped a bunch of garbage, and it has your name all through it." And I, as you can imagine, was completely, like, dumbfounded. I told her, like, "I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. I don't know where you live. I don't know where this place is. And what do you mean, like, my name is all through it?" And she started to say, she was like, "Well, there was a suitcase there and it had your name in it, and inside it had receipts that had your name on it and all these things." And I said, "Oh, well, I did throw out an old broken suitcase for cleanup week." And it was like the day that they had come and pick it up, or the day before, or the day after rather. Said I did throw that out, and there probably was some receipts from my trip to New York, I'm assuming, because that was the only thing I could think of that could have been in there. I said, "But I certainly didn't come and drop it at your property. Like, it was cleanup week. I put it out at the end of our driveway, and like, why am I going to put it in my car and drive it to wherever she lives when I can just take it to the end of my driveway and the garbage man is going to come pick it up?" I said, "I did notice that before the garbage men came that somebody had taken the suitcase." And people do that. If they see something that they think is useful that they can use, they'll stop and they'll take it. Wonderful. I want to keep things out of the dump. So if I have something that's relatively good that I don't know what else to do with, I will put it out by the road before garbage day. And so I said, somebody must have picked it up and then unfortunately discovered that it was broken, because that's why I was throwing it away, and threw it on your property. And I said, "I'm really sorry that that's happened. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. But if you tell me where it is, like, I will go pick it up and anything else that was part of my garbage." And she 10,000% did not believe me. She did not believe me. She was sure that I had taken my stuff and thrown it on her property, which again, to this day, I do not know where it even was located. She gave me the name of the road. I'm not going to say what the name of the road was. I do remember. And she just raked me over the coals, and she was just being so mean. And I was clearly the villain in her story. And I understand why she was angry. I would be angry too if I went and found that somebody had left all sorts of garbage, but it wasn't me. And I tried to tell her, like, not that I would do that, but if I did do that, I would have made damn sure that my name wasn't still on the suitcase, my name and my address. And she's like, well, why would you leave your name on it anyway? And I said, well, it was just going to the dump. Like, anyone can find my address. It's pretty simple in this day and age. I'm not trying to hide it. And she was really, really angry and hostile towards me. And my house is attached to my parents' house, as you probably know. If you don't, now you do. And my father just happened to be walking by, and I thought, I need backup here. I need to haul someone else in on this conversation. And I said, hey, Dad, remember my suitcase that I threw out? Well, apparently somebody picked it up and took it to her house, whoever this person was, and threw it on her property along with a bunch of other garbage. And he was like, what? Anyway, he too offered that we would go out and pick up anything that was ours, that we were terribly sorry that this happened to her, but that we hadn't done it, and explained to her again and again, like, it was garbage week, we put it out by the side of the road, somebody came and picked it up, like, we have no control over what they do with it. And she was not having it. She was adamant that I had tossed this stuff with my name and address all over it. And to this day, I don't know what all over it means, aside from the fact that my name was on my suitcase and perhaps on a couple of receipts inside the suitcase. But I think all over it was a bit of an exaggeration. Anyway, she was very, very angry. She yelled at me for at least half an hour. And finally she went home, and I was upset because this is something I would never, ever, ever do. And I was honestly I was really hurt that somebody would think that I would do that. But it had nothing to do with me. I didn't do it, and there was nothing I could do to change her mind, to make her believe that I didn't do it. And I had to accept that. But it was hard. And I thought about that for years, truly. And a couple years ago, I got a random Facebook message from somebody, and it was her. And she said that she wanted to apologize, that she had come to my house a couple of years earlier and had accused me of doing this and was really rude to me. And she said that she'd felt bad about it ever since, and that she was in a program and she was trying to make amends for things. So I don't know if she was in like AA, NA, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But it was one of the things that was weighing her down was how she had treated me that day. And I replied to her and I said, thank you. Like, I really appreciate your apology. I totally understood why you were so upset that day. But to be honest, I had been holding on to it since that time, and for her to tell me that she was sorry really did mean a lot to me. And to be 100% transparent, I do not recall the name of the girl. I would not know her if I met her tonight. I don't remember what she looked like at all. I just remember the instance. So if by chance you are the girl who happened to be that person, I truly do forgive you. I don't remember your name. I don't remember what you look like. All I remember is the road that the property was on. That is it. But I felt like this was a really good example of how you are the villain in someone else's story. Because here I was doing absolutely nothing wrong. I had done nothing. And suddenly I was the villain in her story. Like, there was nothing I could say or do that was going to make her like me or forgive me until she was ready to, because of what was going on in her life. Again, that was a really crappy circumstance. The fact that anybody would do that, pick up stuff and then go dump it on someone else's property, that's a real jackass move. But it had nothing to do with me, and it really had nothing to do with her, except she was the unfortunate party who owned the property. But I was the villain in her story, and I am certain that I am the villain in some other people's stories. I do not know who they are or how I've become the villain, but I am the villain because that's just the way it is. There's no way for you not to be the villain. If you are putting yourself out there in any way, shape, or form, you are going to be the villain on occasion. And sometimes it is going to be validated. Like sometimes you truly are the villain in the story because you are being a villain. But a lot of times it really doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with that person. And the sooner we can sort of understand that and realize that a lot of times, even when someone gets mad at you, they're not even mad at you. I mean, sometimes they are. Sometimes it's something you've directly done. But if you're just wandering along and something happens and someone blows up at you over what seems like nothing, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has something to do with something else going on in their lives. So the more we can realize that and the more kindness we can give to people when they are exploding, the better off we're all going to be. And I know I do it myself. I'll explode at my husband and then I'll say, you know what, I'm sorry. It's not you. It's just this other stuff going on. I'm stressed out and I've taken it out on you and I apologize. But I will make him the villain even though he hasn't done anything. You can make anyone into the villain. So there's just no way around it. We are all the villain in someone else's story, whether it's a warranted thing or not. So what I want you to take away from this is that not everybody is going to like you, and that's okay. Sometimes they don't like you because of things that are going on in their own life. Sometimes they don't like you just because you don't vibe with them. And I'm listening to Marie Forleo's Everything is Figure Outable right now. And she said today that there are people out there that don't like chocolate. That doesn't mean that chocolate isn't good. It just means that for whatever reason, they don't enjoy chocolate. And that chocolatiers are not sitting at home crying over the percentage of the population who don't like chocolate. They focus on the people who do like chocolate. So you are chocolate, my friend. Not everyone is going to like you. Hopefully, generally, most people will, but there's going to be some who don't. And it is not worth your time or your effort to sit at home and lament over those who do not like you, cry over those who don't like you, or try to force someone to like you. And before I finish this episode, I want to add in one last thing. I was talking to a friend, and she said that when a relationship of hers broke down, that the other party told her, you know what the problem is with you? You assume that everybody likes you. And she's like, yeah, I do assume that everybody likes you. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting. And she said, why is that? I said, because I assume that nobody in the world likes me. I just assume nobody likes me. And then when somebody actually truly somehow does like me, it's just like a wonderful surprise. I go through my life assuming that I am completely forgettable, that people who have met me do not remember me, that nobody is really terribly concerned about what I'm doing, and they might like things that I do, but they don't particularly care for me as a person, not because I have bad self-esteem, but you know what? It's just easier to go through your life that way. At least it is for me. So I just assume that nobody likes me, and then when I find out that people do, I truly am just like, it's like I've won the lottery. And I feel like that's so much nicer place to be than assuming that everybody likes you and then being heartbroken when somebody doesn't. I feel like this might be a terribly pessimistic way to look at life, but you know what? It's working pretty well for me. So if you're listening to this and you like me, thank you, because you make my day. And if you're listening to this and you don't like me, well, I probably already have assumed that you don't. And that is it for this week's episode. If you happen to be listening to this on release day and you are going to Preserve Retreat Blog Jam this weekend, come say hi. Of course, if you're one of the people who's listening to this just to keep up with the people I don't like, and you don't like me, you can just ignore me. It's fine. But if you do like me and you do see me this weekend, come say hi. Because I assume that nobody likes me and nobody remembers me, I very rarely go up to people and say hello because I don't think that they know who I am anyway. So I'm not sure if I have an inferiority complex or if I just have a forgettability complex, but I certainly got something. Anyway, that is it for this week's episode. I hope you found this interesting. Whether it was enlightening or not, I don't know, but I hope you at least found it interesting. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you next week.